You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right, well, everybody, I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for this show, and the moment has arrived. Well, actually, it arrived like a week and a half ago, but The Mandalorian is out. And so we've been doing the Bad Batch, which actually, they did not take any kind of a mid-season break. In fact, I haven't seen it yet. In fact, I haven't seen the last 3 episodes, but the Bad Batch is still churning it out. They just had episode 12. Apparently, it was this really interesting thing with Crosshair. So I'm going to have to check it out at some point. But, man, I mean, the first 2 episodes of The Mandalorian, it was like, you know what? I mean, we need to go on with the Bad Batch, and we'll probably try to do some pre-records or something at some point. But we had to switch gears and definitely start on The Mandalorian. How many episodes are going to be for this season?
I think it's the same. I think it may be, was it 10 or 12?
Yeah.
I can double check that for you momentarily.
That's good. I was going to say either you'll do it or Ronaldo will do it. Ronaldo's joining us right now. A lot of times he'll do it. So yeah, see if you can check that out, because a lot of times they've actually been doing like as few as 8 episodes. I know the Book of Boba Fett, I think, went 12. But that means for the next, I don't know, 8 to 10 weeks. 8? Okay. So the next, well, little less, because we're taking 2 episodes at once. But yeah, for the next 7 weeks, you guys are going to get some Mandalorian action from us. So yeah, we're doing the first 2 episodes, which were chapters 17 and 18, the Apostate and the Mines of Mandalore. So overall, how would you characterize your feelings on this season so far? I mean, we're only 2 episodes in, but still.
Oh, I love it so far. I mean, it's off to a magnificent start. Great visuals, great story, great comedy already so far. It's everything that we've come to know about the Mandalorian. Some cool little moments as well. So I mean, I'm overall excited for this journey.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think it's going to be really good. In fact, I was really struck. It's funny that you talked about the visuals and the cinematography and all that, because particularly in Chapter 18, The Mines of Mandalore, I thought that really it seems like they've upped the cinematography and everything this time around. I mean, it's just crazy next level to me.
Yeah, it just amazes me at what they're able to do in that volume with the Unreal Engine and everything like that. It's just amazing that you're getting that type of detail, that type of movement. I mean, it really does feel like you're on the set, and the fact that they can make that a reality, because you don't know what part is the actual set and what part is, the Unreal Engine thing. And that's the beauty of it. But man, it's so cool that they can do it like that. And like, yeah, because of that, I think that's the reason why they're able to up the cinematography a little bit and do things, because they don't have to worry about building so much of a set, as to now they can kind of just focus on cinematography and bring a lot of those visuals more to life.
Yeah, but that's what was amazing to me, was the fact that it really, this time, more than any of the other seasons, which is, just 2, but more than any of the other seasons, to me, this really didn't feel like we were even on the volume. Like, it felt a lot less claustrophobic in that sense, because the volume, as cool as it was, it sort of had a look to it. There was a definite look, and you could see that, especially with the Obi-Wan series, whereas with Andor, they went and they actually built real sets, and it felt more expansive,
open.
and open. Yeah, exactly. And yet, while The Mandalorian doesn't feel quite as open as, say, Andor does, it does feel quite a bit more open than either the previous seasons or Obi-Wan or things like that. So even when you look at, what was, it was chapter 18, where, he was landing back on Tatooine and seeing, I can never remember her name, the one that,
Oh, Pele,
yeah, I think that's it,
um, yeah, it's like
Pelly or
Pele or
something
something
like
like.
that. Yeah, I mean, when you look at when the ship is coming down, I mean, it actually
Mm-hmm.
looked to me very organic and real and practical. That did not feel like CGI or something that was generated from the volume or any of that. I mean, it was very, I mean, it was almost like you could just reach out and touch everything. So I really
Yeah,
liked that. Ronaldo says, overall, the first episode was really good and fun. But the second one was amazing. He goes on to say that it felt like a movie. And
yeah.
that's pretty much how I think I would characterize it too. I mean, the first episode I thought was a fairly strong open. There was chunks to it, right? I mean, we had to find out basically what was happening since we last saw him in season 1 of the Book of Boba Fett, and a little bit of the character growth between him and Grogu, and then of course he initially sees bo-katan, and she of course wants nothing to do with, it's like, hey, I'm ready to fight with you on Mandalore now, and she's like, yeah, well, there kind of is no Mandalore, so
Yeah, about
get out of
that.
here, right? And really, in chapter 17, what struck me out as, I guess what really hit me was the whole scene with Grief Karga. Grief Karga, as we see him, he's starting to
Hmm.
get this kind of Lando vibe going, right? Like, you know what?
Yeah,
I'm
definitely.
going honest. I'm the administrator of this facility, sort of thing.
Hmm.
I mean, we saw a little bit of that in season 2 because he had Cara Dune as the marshal, but now, this whole magistrate thing, or, chief magistrate, as he
Hmm.
always likes to correct and say, there's a lot of that Lando thing. He's trying to go honest. He's trying to be that guy. And he's more flamboyant looking and,
Hmm.
and everything. But the whole scene where those pirates were basically about to, I mean, you just really felt the tension in that standoff. I mean, this is great
Yeah.
too. Before you answer that, Ronaldo says Grief looked like a Roman emperor.
He does.
And he
Yeah,
does.
that's totally, well, that's what it kind of gave me, like the new vibe of
Yeah.
what's the name of it?
I guess we're back.
Navarro, yeah.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah, for Navarro, it has that whole like Rome look,
It
it's got
does.
like that whole, it's cleaned up now, it's because
Hmm.
if you remember, like, Navarro had like sticks of stormtrooper helmets all over it, it was just kind of almost like a baby Tatooine in a way,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but now it's been renovated, and everything is all like, more clean and pristine now. Um, Obviously he's changed, and he's the government now.
Yeah.
And this is so funny that he went from like this guy that's essentially like a bounty hunter manager or bookie, and he deemed himself like emperor of this planet now, or this, at least the city. So it's just like, okay, how would how did that even happen? Like, okay, was there a vote? Did he just up and say like, well, I'll step in this, like, how did that even transpire? But
That's actually a good
beyond.
point. No, really, that's a good point, because if you think about it, and as I'm reflecting back on the episode, because again, I saw it, I don't know, like a day or two after it premiered, but I wouldn't have almost minded seeing a mini series of what happened to Grief between when we last saw him in season 2 and here, because you're
That's
right.
probably the next spinoff.
Well, yeah, exactly. Or maybe it's the movie, right? Grief Karga, a Star Wars story. Of course, it would just be
Right.
called Karga, probably. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot in there. And that's what I think is so cool about Star Wars in general, especially now, is the fact that there's always, as they're traversing through the whole story arcs in the whatever the proper storyline is for either the season, or maybe if it's a trilogy of films or whatever it is. But every time they stop at a scene, you can sit there and go, there's there's some good story in just, well, how do we get there from here? And the Grief
Mm-hmm.
Karga thing is a really good example of that, where it's like, well, how did that happen? I want to see that, because honestly, if the story had remained on that planet, in that city, I would have been fine with it. And of course, I was really surprised when he was trying to bring IG-11 back.
Mm-hmm.
And, I thought when the whole thing, when, they first bring him back and he pretty much reverts
Tries
back
to
to his, yeah.
basic setting, and he was trying to kill Grogu.
Mm-hmm. And he was just like going psycho. And I mean, that was just awesome. And like you said, I mean, and that just shows the comedy in this is every bit as strong as it was in any of the previous seasons. And again, the thing that I really like about the comedy in this is the fact that it's there, but it's not overdone.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's present. It's Star Wars centric, which I love. They're not trying to do too much of that Marvel humor. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, with Pele, you kind of get that a little bit, but you kind of
Yeah, but I
ignore
mean,
it.
that her character, I mean, there
Well,
there have
right,
been
her
similar
character kind of,
things in Star Wars.
yeah, her character kind of lends to it, so you allow it more or less.
Yeah.
But um, yeah, I think that it's really um it's properly placed. It's kind of like one of those things where, when he was talking to like Babu Frick's little
Oh yeah.
species or whatever, which I thought that was hilarious
That was,
that they brought them
that
back
was
in.
really, especially when Grief was trying to tell him, like, there'd be like partially
He's trying
basic
to
words,
translate.
and he's trying to
Yeah,
translate. I mean, just that whole thing was just killing me because it was so funny.
yeah, and he's trying to understand him. He's like, okay, he's basically saying it's busted. He's like, yeah, I got that. It's just
Exactly.
so yeah. So those moments were cool. I really because he's like, oh, you still traveling around with this little guy. It's like, thought you had gotten rid of him, and Grogu's gotten pretty, advanced too. And that's the other thing too. We've seen the growth in him, not physically, but it's we in these two episodes we've seen just how more aware he is
Yeah.
of the galaxy, the world. He's starting to understand things. The fact that he kind of tried to talk a little bit, and Pele's like, oh, did he just was those his first words, and that whole thing. The fact that she was speaking to the Jawas in their native language,
Oh,
even
I
though she was
know.
just speaking to him, but that was just funny just to see a human speaking Jawa, basically.
Well, and
So yeah,
that's one
there's a
of the
lot to
things
it.
that, exactly, and that's one of the things that I think really lends. I think more than any of the shows, even though you could say quality wise, Andor is probably the best. But Mandalorian is definitely the most fun. And it also has extremely quality writing, and that's a really good example of that, right? That's one of the
Hmm.
reasons when we were reviewing Solo last week, or actually 2 weeks ago, because we were supposed to do Rogue One, which we will be doing Monday. But when we were doing Solo, that was one of the criticisms that I had anyway of it, was the fact that they were, it was like you had these aliens that were speaking, in just like a normal, like there was nothing really
Hmm.
special about it. I mean, I get the whole idea that English is basic in the Star Wars universe, but it's like they shouldn't have really been speaking that. Whereas in The Mandalorian, you have Jawas speaking their language, and you have humans actually speaking to them in their language. Like, it just,
Hmm.
there's a more realistic vibe to the whole thing. And
Sure.
it,
Yeah, I
uh,
would definitely say that. Hmm?
let's see, Ronaldo says, it's mind blowing to think that 2 years have passed from season 2 to 3. And he goes on to say, too, that Grogu is the MVP, which, yeah, I'm sure we'll dissect more of that as we go on. And then he says, speaking about that, do you guys think Grogu is going to talk at some point? I think not. And I would probably agree with that. the whole marketing department would go insane if Grogu ever spoke, because that's part of. I mean, technically, at some point, you would think he has to, depending on when they, how long they carry this character.
Well, I mean, the thing is, with Grogu, with him being like 50 years old in that particular species, is practically still an infant.
That's true.
So it's kind of like, at what point does he start to become, like, say, a toddler or something like that,
Right.
or where he can start speaking? And then what is he going to sound like? Is he going to sound like Yoda, or because this is the only time, because Yaddle didn't talk backwards like that. I don't believe.
No.
From what we saw in the Tales of the Jedi thing, she didn't have the whole backwards speaking thing
No,
going
not at
on.
all. And in fact, well, if you figure it this way, if 900 years old is like
Lucas
really
good.
old, right? You can almost say that every 100 years is like every human decade, right? Because 900 would be like 90, let's say. So
Mhm.
you could figure that 50 years would probably be like being a 5-year-old. Now, a 5-year-old can speak and can run around and, do a lot of this stuff. But again, maybe it's a slower thing. Maybe, it takes a good 100 years and then there's a slightly accelerated growth. Because like you said, we only have Yoda as an example of this species. We don't, and I mean, we do have
Yeah,
Yaddle, so that's a good
but
point
it's not
too.
but it's not like we've seen Yaddle, like, at least in film form, where she's, where we have things to really compare it to. We just have it from an animation standpoint.
Right.
Is when we see her speaking.
Right, because the only time
So
we've seen her in the films is the Phantom Menace, and she didn't say anything that I
right, it was
remember
like a
anyway.
quick shot of her. Yeah, she didn't
Yeah.
say anything. It was a quick shot of her anyway. So, but getting back to, like, and not so we completely deviated, but
Well, before you get
with
to that,
Grogu.
I just
Mhm.
want to get Ronaldo's comment in there because it relates directly to what we're saying. He says, to be honest, it's not important to the story if he talks or not, which is
That's
true.
true.
And like I said, it's probably better that he doesn't talk. But yes.
Yeah, it keeps that whole cuteness about him anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I think that, with grief, um, kind of revitalizing Navarro, and now, he's on this whole quest, and he's still trying to hold him in, like, hey man, I got this property land. I mean, just hearing him talk, it's like, yeah, I got this land. You can live out there. It's all yours. You can be the sheriff of the marsh. You can do whatever you want
Well, you know
out
what
there.
that
You can.
reminded me of? That totally reminded me of that episode in season 1 when he met that woman because he was in that village and that Scout Walker attacked him. That was like around episode 5 or something of season 1. And she was basically like, well, you and, the little one, because they didn't know Grogu's name at that point.
Mm-hmm.
You guys could just live out your lives here. And, the village loved him and all that other stuff.
Oh yeah.
It really had that vibe because once again, it was kind of like this was Din's shot at a normal life. In that case, it was a family and a woman that loved him
Mm-hmm.
and a village that embraced him, and he can live in peace and comfort. And his whole vibe then was, well, I can't do that because there's people that are hunting him and they're going to stop at nothing. I don't want to bring danger on it. And now here we see that he's faced with a similar choice. It's like, hey, you guys could settle down. You don't have to do the bounty hunting thing anymore. You could just be the marshal of this town and everything will be cool. And again, he goes on to say a similar thing. It's like, well, I can't relax until I go bathe in the waters of Lake Minnetonka or whatever.
I knew you were going to. At some point, I knew
I
that
mean,
joke
come
was
on.
going to be made.
It
I
has
knew
to
the
be,
joke was going to be
dude.
made at some point. I just didn't know when. But
It has to be. That was so. I could not get that out of my head the whole time. It's like
Oh, trust
bo-katan's
me.
kind of like Apollonia. I mean, it just. It was.
Well, hilarious if he made her get naked or something.
Oh, yeah.
Especially when we got
Exactly.
to, like,
Well, and
But
instead of a
yeah,
motorcycle, if it was a speeder bike, I mean, it
Peter,
would have. I mean, it would have worked. I'm just saying.
start playing, music. It's like Prince playing in the background.
Right.
But no, yeah, I mean, once again, the comedic aspect, when he tried to correct him on Grogu, he's like, "What? Grogu? That's his name." He's like, "Yeah, whatever." He just completely dismissed it. You know, but I really do love the advancement of grief. I love, you know, Dan and Grogu definitely still have that father son kind of vibe. He's explaining to him like, yeah, even in was it season, not season, episode 18, he's just like, to be a Mandalorian, you have to learn how to navigate the universe. You have to know how to deal with people,
Yep.
so you're never lost. And so he's teaching him as he's going along, like, this is kind of what you have to do if you're going to be one of us. And I did notice that even under his little Jedi tunic, he has a little chainmail
Yeah.
thing that Grief
Well, what
had
I
made
think is
for him.
cool about that, speaking of that, and then Ronaldo has a comment that we'll get to in a second, but I really do like the fact that Grogu has essentially adapted both a little bit of the Jedi way and a little bit of the Mandalorian way. He
Hmm.
ultimately chose to go with Din, obviously, but he's still somewhat utilizing what he had learned, and he's becoming a little bit more sophisticated, a little bit more controlled. Of course, he doesn't have to take a power nap every time he uses a Force now, which is nice. Um, there's things like that. But Ronaldo brings up something that I was going to get to later. He says, "What did you think the way they managed Cara Dune? I think it worked pretty well. Just a little line of dialogue." And yes, because
Hmm.
it was good that they did the look. You don't have to kill people off just because somebody gets fired or an actor decides to leave or something. This leaves the door open for one or two possibilities. You can either have it to where, maybe Gina Carano comes back. Maybe, you get a situation where they recast her, or maybe you're just leaving it open because the problem is if you kill somebody off, then there's no other medium. There's no books. It's like
Hmm.
any books, any comics, anything that you write now has to take place season 2 or before, or maybe like in between.
Right.
So now you've given the writers of the other forms
A,
of media some
a
options.
block,
Yeah,
basically.
right.
Yeah.
And I thought it
Yeah.
was
Well,
great.
oh, absolutely. Yeah. Them dealing how they, and you gotta make mention of it, especially if you've been watching the last two seasons.
Yeah.
You gotta wonder, okay, what happened to her?
Well, because she
So,
was
especially
really
people who might not
prominent.
be, yeah, and especially people who have been following the news on it, you don't
Yeah,
know.
right.
It's like,
That's true.
okay, like,
That is true. I mean, it's funny because you do keep forgetting about those people where, it's
those
kind of
people.
like, well, in the sense of, because, and there's a lot of times, and I've seen this time and time again, where, you'll bring up something like all the people that thought that Rogue One was episode 8 or just stuff
Hmm.
like that. I mean, it's amazing the stuff that you think is actually out there and popular, right? That is out there in the news all the time. It's not like some super little, I don't know, bit of information that only super fans or something would know. I mean, this stuff is reported in Variety or, any of the other Entertainment Weekly or something. And yet people are just like unaware. And
Hmm.
so you're right. I mean, there's probably a lot of people that did expect Cara Dune to be in there and were probably like, oh, I wonder what happened to her. Because, especially in season 2, she started to become more prominent in the storyline.
Sure, she was on the bridge when Luke showed up and everything. I mean, that's where we kind of last saw her. So it's kind of like, all right, well, you just expect her um to be there. They even touched on Gideon, as far as like, he's being charged for his war crimes and all this type of stuff. Um the other thing that I really thought was cool is like when they flash back to like when Din was a foundling, and I guess he was taking the oath, and he first kind of had to when he first put on the helmet and everything like that, and the whole ceremony for that was really cool.
That
and
was
fighting
cool.
that crazy beast that flew out of the
Man.
water scared the crap out of me.
Well, you know what? Let's
I did not expect that.
let's go
at
there
all.
too, because honestly, that thing that it was at the end of chapter 18 when
Oh
when they were
yeah.
coming up out of the water, that thing was
Oh
just insane.
no, the one. Oh yeah, the one that snatched him under. Yeah, I didn't. That was like a Deep Blue Sea moment
Very much
when
so.
Samuel Jackson
Yeah.
when Samuel Jackson's
We're
delivering that
not
whole
going to take
speech.
this anymore, whatever.
And the shark just comes in and
Well,
it's just
because
like,
you didn't really
whoa.
know what it was, right? So it kind of had shades of the Dianoga from episode 4, because when it just pulled Luke under and you didn't see it.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like, when they were flying up past it, I mean, that thing was really freaky. But yes, in chapter 17, that thing they were fighting. And again, it's like, how do
Yeah.
you fight these things? Right? Like I would probably either pass out, die of shock if I saw this thing in person. I mean, how do you... And they're just over there like shooting at it and nothing was happening. And then Din eventually comes back.
Yeah, he
Which,
comes in and
yeah, he comes in. Because, the cool thing is that, and I wonder if that kid, I don't know if it's going to be, like, if he's going to be a recurring character or what. Or if that was just, hey, they're just showing you that they're still doing these ceremonies, and then Din comes in and kind of saves the day. And at first I thought maybe the armor was going to cut him some slack, because he did fly in and help destroy this thing. But nope.
well, what I love was the misdirection, because I thought that was a young Din. I thought it was a flashback.
Yeah,
And
well,
then
they
at
do
first,
give you that impression when the thing first starts,
yeah, when
until
you
you see
first, yeah,
the...
when it first starts, yeah, and then you're
What's the
like,
name of his ship
then
now?
you see,
The Naboo
oh,
Starfighter.
the new,
Yeah, because it was the Razor Crest before, right? That was
right,
his...
that was a big ship.
Right, but did they ever name the thing?
Once again,
I don't know. I don't know if they
let me
named
see.
it. Ronaldo, while you're looking that up, he says, that monster scared the force out of me. Yeah, let me tell you, man, that monster was really, really well done. Really,
Yeah.
really well done. He also goes on to say, anyone else thought that little helmet was for Grogu? Yeah, and I still wonder if they're going to do anything with Grogu as far as giving him more Mandalorian gear. Are we going to get a little helmet with ear holes, or, I don't know. I mean, I guess it might be a little silly, but it also might be adorable. And then again, the marketing department will go insane and start, giving us little Mando Grogu t-shirts and stuff like that. But it is something that you do have to think about, though, right? Because he is Mandalorian. And here's the thing that's weird. Now, he's a foundling. He's a Mandalorian. Now, of course, he hasn't talked yet. But the question that I have is, Din is so focused on, I can't remove my helmet, I shouldn't have done it in the first place. Why isn't he making Grogu wear a helmet? It's the way.
Well, I think it's because he hasn't taken the oath and all that. Because as you saw, like in the whole ceremony, the kid didn't wear him until he took the whole oath and everything.
Yeah, and that's a good point too, because I think that whole misdirection part was actually, I don't think they were intentionally trying to do misdirection. I think they were trying to show you the origin of where that oath came from and why Din takes it so seriously. By showing another example of, hey, here's another, here's another version of it. Ronaldo says, hey, Grogu with a helmet would make a terrific toy. Oh, absolutely. You could see it.
Especially with the ears coming out.
Yeah, you could see the whole action figure thing, man. You could just, it would just be, oh, Ronaldo, you're just like on fire tonight, man. You're, of course I have to wait till it actually comes into the system. But yeah, it's one of those things where I just think that there's a lot that they could do with that. And to that end, Ronaldo says, I wonder if Grogu becomes a full Mandalorian, will he say the oath?
Yeah, that's the thing.
Well, it depends on how far he wants to take it.
Yeah, I think if they did a season finale or something like that, I could see that kind of happening.
Season
Almost
or
like him
series?
series finale. Sorry, series finale. I could see that. Um, but yeah, the fact that he's going on this whole journey, he goes to find Bo-Katan, and she's got a pretty sweet layout too. Her layout, her little palace kind of reminds me of the Tony Stark Avengers.
It does, but here's my question about that. We see this in 17, we see this in 18. Is she literally just sitting in that chair the whole time? The whole time. I mean, he goes,
I know, right?
he gets her help. She's all kind of laying in the chair, all moping and, basically just being very, I don't know.
Despondent.
Despondent. Exactly. Okay, cool. Whatever. Just having a bad day. Period. Maybe. I don't know. But Mando Din flies away, right? He does all this stuff, and then he comes back, and she's doing the same thing. She's still in that chair. It's like just with her head in her hands, and it's like, is that literally all you're doing?
Well, to go along with it, I was thinking to myself as I'm watching it, like, okay, it doesn't seem like there's anybody else around but her and this droid. So my thing is like, what happens if Mando just pulls up one day and she's not even there? Like, what if she's off world somewhere else? Like, you're taking an awful risk that she's even home.
Well, but then again, there's nothing in there to steal.
Well, no, I'm not stealing. I'm just saying, like, that's just
you mean just, like what happens if he flies all the way there?
So like, I just pulled up to your house and didn't call or anything. I just showed up at your house and it's like, oh, you're not even home.
See, so that brings me to a pet peeve. No, that's like a literal pet peeve. I hate that. I've hated this ever since I was a kid, man. When people just show up unannounced. What is up with that? I'll never forget this one time. One of my friends shows up. Like, I was in the shower. Okay? This is when I was like a teenager still. I was in the shower. And usually what I would do is I would go take my shower, and then I would go back up in my room and get dressed or whatever. Well, the problem is, my dad had let this guy in, sent him up to my room. So now I'm stuck. I'm like, okay, all of my clothes are in my room. My friend is now in my room. And I don't even remember what I ended up doing.
A little weird.
It was really weird, man. I mean, it was just, and again, that was just the start of the whole cycle. And I used to have people do this to me all the time where they would just show up out of the blue. And I always hated that. And that's a good point, because in this universe, she could have been off-world. She could have been doing something.
She could have had a little company over. You never know. I mean,
right. Exactly.
You're kind of just...
I mean, who knows?
Exactly. Woman has needs. But, I mean, just
Scrubbing
saying.
The droid.
It's just... No, hand her to the hydro spinner. Anyway.
Yeah, there you go.
But no, it's how do you just show up and just expect her to just, and I've always thought that, like, in a lot of these movies, people just show up and just expect the person to be there, like, especially like these diplomats, because it's like, okay, well, I mean, I get it. Most kings and queens usually stay in their castle, but if you're a diplomat, you might have to handle some business, like I said, on another planet or another city somewhere. Like, you're just taking an awful risk just showing up and not knowing when they're coming back.
Like you said, you might just be going out. I mean, maybe she's going out for, I don't know, like a pizza or
girls' night or something.
Yeah, I mean, or just, right. Maybe there's a salon somewhere. It's a big planet. I don't know. But I mean, that was one of the things that I thought. And here's the other thing that makes it even weirder. Now, granted, maybe, well, no, because he did totally come unannounced, because just from the context of the scene. But here's the thing that I always find funny. Yeah, but here's the part that's weird. So this is like 2 years later. So this implies that this is the first time in 2 years that, from the events of season 2. Now, we do know we get a little bit of a thing in the Book of Boba Fett, right? Where we get, it's kind of like Mandalorian season 2.5, where we do get a little information on what he was doing. And I liked in chapter 18 how Peli, they reference that. Oh, are you here to, help Boba Fett again with something? There was that.
Yeah,
I like
connective
the
tissue.
Yes, I like the continuity aspect. I like the fact that the Disney Plus television universe here is really doing their best subtly, because I had some of the same. I didn't quite have a lot of the same issues that John Campea did. I was watching his show and his review about chapter 18, and his point, which, excuse me, I don't entirely disagree with, where he said one of the Star Wars issues that they have in Disney Plus series is what you would call, member berries, right? Like, oh, remember this, and oh, remember this planet, and oh, oh, look at this character, and look at that Easter egg, and they're always trying to bring you back to the familiar and basically tickle the little nostalgia sense and give you those warm feelings and all that stuff, but. And I think that that's what he was basically saying when he's going back to Tatooine, and you have R5D4, which that I actually thought was kind of funny. Because if anybody doesn't remember R5D4, and by the way, in 1977, maybe 78, I don't remember how long it took me, I had the figure. I had the R5D4 figure. I always, red's my favorite color anyway, and I always thought that, like, this alternate R2D2 thing was really cool. Here was a different R2 type droid. Well, he's like an R5. He's an astromech droid. So I really thought it was cool that they decided to add a little bit more to the story of R5D4 by having him reprogram. And the fact that he's going with Din is hilarious. Din's just like, I don't need an astromech. I need like a,
yeah,
like some sort of warrior thing.
Well, what was hilarious is that the hilarious thing about it is that he didn't want to, R5D4 didn't want to do anything. He was actually acting really scary.
Like,
which I love, because I love the fact that they always kind of make these droids almost interact like humans, but they're not. But they have human-like behavior. But what I love was what made it funny to me, because it's R5D4 and he was acting really scared. So then when you think to what Luke said in 77, he was like, in A New Hope, it's like, he's got a bad motivator. It's just kind of funny, because he's like, he was never really motivated, even with Din, to really,
That's a good point. Ronaldo says, I think that's one weakness. It makes sense sometimes, but other times it doesn't when you're actually going back and giving us these things. But he says, have you read the story where he's a Force-sensitive droid?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I did actually. It was an old expanded universe legend story. I don't remember where it was in though.
I'm so stupid.
Ronaldo says he's like the anti-R2D2, a coward. Which is true, yeah. And I mean, I think that it's really cool that they actually, like you said, they gave him a little bit of a personality, which we talked about in Solo when we did our review of Solo, which, by the way, is on our channel in one of the playlists.
And Netflix. Just joking.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, in our channel we're showing, hey, well, we did that with Family Guy, right? And the holiday special. But basically, we talked about how it's becoming increasingly more difficult to give these droids personalities, like their own unique little personality. And I'm sure when we do the Rogue One in-depth discussion on Monday, we'll probably talk at length about K2SO and how he's different from a lot of the droids that we have seen before. So you have a lot of different elements, and to take a droid that was familiar, I mean, he didn't really play a big part, right? You just, come on, Red, let's go. And then he goes a couple of feet,
he blows
up, and then that's kind of all we see of him. And of course, there's an action figure of him. That was the other thing too. I mean, he looked cool, but they had a lot of the action figures back then where you're like, this guy, they had Hammerhead, Hammerhead had like one scene in the cantina, like they showed him for a second and that was pretty much it. But nope, you get a figure. Why? Because he looks cool and we need to market this stuff. And so I thought it was really clever that they actually took a character like this and gave him a little bit more of a story.
Yeah, I like the fact that, and I thought this is really cool, and I've often wondered because it seems like he's able to pull that helmet off very easily. But before he gets out of the starfighter, he's like, "All right, I got to pressurize my helmet." And it's just like, okay, well, you don't have an oxygen tank, attached to it.
Oh yeah.
So,
to be
so I'm
honest,
just wondering,
that scene bothered me. That bothered me
I'm
because,
just
like you said, I mean, it's basically like just slipping a helmet over your head. Does it?
Yeah, because he can pull that thing off. I mean, relatively easy, and it seems like I always wonder how it doesn't come off, like when he's in battles and stuff like that. So, like, is there some like locking mechanism on the thing, or
Oh, I'm sure. I'm
'cause
sure
it's
there
like-
is, but well, that part of it, that's what I always assumed, right? That there was just kind of like some sort of something that's gripping the head or something. But the whole pressurizing, there'd have to be like some sort of force field that's coming under you. I mean, it's,
yeah,
it's not attached to
Like
the armor. It's not
yeah,
fixed
exactly.
to anything. Yeah, I know. It is a little crazy. Ronaldo says, he's talking about R5D4 still. He basically knew through the Force that R2 was important for the galaxy's fate, and he committed suicide so that Luke chose R2 and not him. I did hear about that. That may have been something, actually, that Lucas may have said during the commentary. Because if you guys, I don't know if you remember or not, or if, it's even been a while since I've gone through and listened to it. But when Star Wars was initially released on DVD, I think the special editions, Lucas actually did new commentaries. And if you haven't seen it, it's a good time to go back and watch it because he gives away a lot of information. Like there's a lot of canonical information in there about like things that fans debate about. It's there.
Yeah. Switching gears, we're still staying in 18 though. I really loved, when they decided to descend into the cave, well, not to the cave, into the city, and just like the jetpacks, and then like how Grogu, he had his whole little boosters on his little pod or whatever, and they're going through, and of course, when he eventually gets captured by whatever that thing was freaky too.
See,
I
now
give him
that
credit,
thing,
man. The monsters or the little creatures in the thing
I know,
are really freaky. Even a little like gargoyle type, whatever the heck those things were.
Oh, I know.
They're like from like Might and Magic or something like.
I know. That's kind of what I felt like I was watching, like some sort of Elder Scrolls thing or something. But
right,
that creature that captured Din basically totally gave me
Giant
Grievous.
eye.
I'm thinking, man, this is like a Grievous kind of thing, like some sort of organic creature, but in some mechanical body or whatever. And I couldn't help but wonder, like, I mean, did they somehow, I don't know, because you got to wonder who that, there's something, it just seems like there's more to it than that, right? Like who put that creature in that mechanical body? Where did he get all this stuff from? I mean, there was a lot of somewhat almost horror or horror fantasy type elements into that. Yeah, because I mean, just the whole scene where he was being captured and he had to fight it initially. You got some, and then of course when those other creatures came out, and then of course when bo-katan faces them and tells Grogu, "Oh yeah, they're here to basically eat people," and I mean it's just, especially that scene where she kind of is talking to Grogu and then she stops, kind of looks at the ceiling and busts down, and then they just all came down. I mean, that kind of freaked me out.
Yeah, she shot him out the ceiling.
Yeah, out of the
pretty
ceiling.
much.
Yep.
I thought it was interesting the fact that he was like, when he got captured, he was like, go get bo-katan, go to bo-katan or whatever. And
Right.
it's just like he could. How do you? But I loved it was so cute when finally gets back into the ship and he points at the little planet like, here, go here.
Oh yeah.
So that was kind of cute. And he when he shows up in Bo-Katan's like, okay, well, where is he? So she's like, all right, you got to take me with him. And then just her whole relationship, like she starts talking to him like, yeah, Mandalorians and the Jedi, were really cool at one point. We really kind
That
of,
was a nice Easter egg too, because of course
yeah.
Bo-Katan fought with Obi-Wan and Anakin and all them, and yeah, it
Hmm.
was
Yeah.
again nice connective tissue,
And the whole Tars Vizsla, like the fact that he was a Jedi who was who's Mandalorian, and he's like, yeah, that's where the whole dark saber and everything, kind of comes from. That was cool.
Well, before
But
we get
to
to
see,
that, let me
mhm.
let me just get a couple of Ronaldo's comments in here because they relate. Again, I don't want to get too far beyond, where it's a little bit too remedial. He says that robot creature looked really cool and creepy, but I like that it didn't talk, and that's a great point because sometimes
Mhm.
I think that Star Wars they didn't used to, but it overuses communication a lot. I like the fact that they kept this thing scary, menacing, threatening. And he goes on to say, I hope we don't learn where it came from. I want them to keep the mystery. Well, that you're going to have to try hard not to because, look, the bottom line, they're going to have some book, some encyclopedia for Star Wars or something, probably already in the Star Wars data bank on starwars.com that's going to give you the entire history of that thing. So my advice, if you don't want to know where it came from, don't look too hard. But yes, let's talk about the Darksaber for a second. The one thing that struck me that I absolutely loved when Din was fighting with it, it's still
Mhm.
heavy. He's still trying to do all this stuff. He's better with it than he was at first. But then Bo-Katan gets it, and she's just
Mhm.
like going to
She's
town
like,
with it.
yeah, exactly.
And I like that juxtaposition that they put in there.
I thought when she's rescued him, I thought she was gonna keep it. Honestly, like, well,
I
I got
know.
it.
That's my thing. It's like, exactly. The fact, and I also thought that when Din picked it up and was getting ready to clip on his belt, that she was just going to be like, hey.
Yeah, let me get that.
Mhm.
But um, I even like just the whole thing. It was like, okay, she was gonna like, look. So fine, I'll go down to the waters with you. And she was giving even her backstory, like, yeah, my dad was so really proud of me, and
Mhm.
she was kind of making fun of him, like, oh, I think it's cute that you believe in all this crap,
Yeah, I know. I mean, the crap
just
that she was giving him when they went to the water and stuff like that. I mean, I was just like, man.
yeah. But it was so sweet that like when she threw her helmet on and dove into the water and not at the pack and was just flying. I'm like, I didn't think they could do that. I was like, well, that's pretty sweet. Once again, it pressurized because like no water got in. I mean, like you just gotta wonder, like
Well,
maybe it
I know how
pressurizes like under the.
that I understand how it works because it's very much like the underwater welding torches that they have here on Earth, where
Well, no, I'm talking about
basically
the helmet
the helmet. Oh well,
because
yeah. I mean,
because no water got into. She
I
just
know,
because you
I
can hear
know.
her just pressurize it, and then so maybe it's just right under the chin or something like that. I don't know, but she was able to pressurize the helmet, and then she shot underwater with the jetpack, which is I mean, like you say, like a acetylene torch, underwater acetylene torch, pretty much, and she was able to propel herself, through the. But man, I had no idea that thing was that deep either.
I know. That was the other thing I was looking at. I'm like, man, really? I mean, it
But
just
that beautiful shot
oh
of them when she was ascending and that thing was chasing. It was like Jaws, like a shark was coming up from under them, and they're just ascending through the water. I
yeah. I
thought
mean, the
that
whole
was really
thing, that whole
great
scene was
cinematography.
just it was cool. And again, that was another example when you saw that creature. Now, that scene reminded me of the movie Underwater. That Kristen Stewart. Who else was in that? But basically, the creature at the end of that, that's still one of the most horrifying scenes at the end for me, because I mean, it's been out for a while, so I don't mind talking about it. But basically, there's this whole, they're being attacked in this underwater thing, because I guess this underwater station or whatever, they pretty much disturb these creatures. And you see all these creatures chasing them. And at the end, when she's the only one left, and she knows she's going to die because she knows there's no escape, she sees just this enormous creature that's under there. I mean, absolutely enormous. And it's kind of like the Cthulhu or whatever. That's really what that creature was modeled after. And that whole scene was essentially what this underwater creature reminded me of, because it was the same kind of thing. They're going up, and you see like kind of a, some little thing going or whatever, but then you see like its eyes and its mouth or whatever, and you're just like, whoa. And once again, and this makes sense too. I mean, if you're going from planet to planet, you're going to encounter creatures, but I mean, are they aware of all these different things? And it's like, are they just attacked by crazy, enormous creatures all the time? Because, I mean, obviously they have that sense of urgency to get away from it, but I mean, it's no different than Star Trek. We always got to reference Star Trek on the show. You and I have made the joke so many times about, they're flying through space, right? It's like, oh, sir, somebody's hailing us. All right, we'll put them on screen. And I mean, not once do they just go, whoa. I mean, it's like no matter
the heck
how.
is that?
Exactly. No matter how bizarre, no matter how ghoulish or scary or disgusting the creature looks, they're just always the same. Oh, well, greetings, Captain whatever.
It's called being a professional.
Yeah, I mean, granted, I mean, and I guess you could make the argument they probably train you for that. They're in Starfleet Academy going, all right, listen, you're going to run across some really nasty, weird things. Don't show it. It's no different than here with a doctor, right? You come in with some nasty, gross thing. The doctor's like going back, going, man, you should have seen the nasty thing I just saw. But you can't say that to the patient.
Right.
Right? You have to say, well, it's all right, Mr. Jenkins. We can get this out. And it's, and that's probably what they're doing.
But yeah, man, I really enjoyed these 2 episodes. I thought they were really good. There's a lot of information that was given, especially in 18, where you're hearing like bo-katan talk. You heard a lot of stuff with Din, just his conversation with Grogu. I thought it was really exciting. I thought it was really fun. Kept you on the edge of your seat. I mean, had like we talked about the little creatures that kept popping up between the 2 episodes and how they affected the story. So overall, I really enjoyed it. I think 18 was probably my favorite.
Yeah.
Out of the 2. Yeah. But I think the Mandalorian's off to a really great start. I mean, we see Grogu's definitely way more confident in the Force now. That's another thing I want to touch on before we leave, is that, when he was trying to get to his ship and that little thing that little ogre was trying to block him, he was just like, oh,
oh, yeah.
And just,
it just
that thing went
thing
flying. I'm just like, all right.
Yeah. Yeah, it went flying.
So,
and then, of course, when he goes to his ship, he does that super Yoda jump, and right into the ship.
It kind of pops up and he
kind of pops up.
Yeah. It's kind of like the thing Luke was telling when he was on those stones. So, yeah, you can see, like you
kernel,
said. So you can see that it was a lot of his Jedi training came into play there.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really awesome.
Ronaldo says, I enjoyed Swamp Thing's cameo. And he thinks that episode 18 or chapter 18 was the best one. Yeah, I mean, again, I think that Chapter 17 did what it was supposed to do. It gave us a really interesting, compelling story that showed us where our characters are at during this time, because a couple of years have passed between seasons 2 and 3. So you do have to get a little bit of where are they now? Catch up, basically. But 18, of course, just took it to the next level. And I really like the fact that they are expanding the storyline. They're giving us incredibly exciting sequences and just different kinds of creatures. I mean, this is the kind of thing I love about Star Wars, because this is the kind of thing that's going to push the franchise forward. They're expanding it, but without doing it in such a way that it doesn't feel like Star Wars anymore. People in the story group at Lucasfilm should really take note from Filoni and Favreau on this, because those guys know how to craft a good story, number one, expand the Star Wars universe a little bit, and then also give us the familiar. Not take us too far away from what makes Star Wars Star Wars. Ronaldo says that Grogu is really well trained. Yeah, he hasn't forgotten what Lucas taught him. But yet he's combining that with what Din is teaching him. So yeah, I guess we probably have to rate these, right? So I would probably say, I'm going to go ahead and give 17 a 7 and 18 an 8. Because
works for me.
It's a really solid start. It did exactly what it was supposed to do. It gave us,
absolutely,
like I said, really exciting scenes, great creatures, character development. They were good. They were good. I mean, it wasn't, like, particularly with 17, I mean, it wasn't one of those, like, man, like the season finale of 2, right? With the old Luke Skywalker thing. I mean, you have to reserve, but it did its job, though. I mean, when it opened, you were welcomed back into this universe. It actually made you feel good about being there, and it set up a really good story for what we think is going to happen this season. And, of course, we're seeing a little bit more of that. I like Bo-Katan's expansion in this series, because everybody forgets this is the first time we've seen her in live action. So, yeah. So you're doing the same thing, 7 and 8?
7 and 8 for me. For pretty much the same reasons. I mean, it did all the things, hit all the beats, had a great comedy where it needed to be, great action, great story. It didn't do too much, and of course, still had you wanting more. So, yeah, I'm all in.
All right. Well, all that's left to do is find out what you guys think. So again, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you already haven't done so, because, hey, you guys are going to want to know when we're coming up next. Although lately that doesn't necessarily mean we'll really be there, but we shoot for every Monday and every Friday live at 8 o'clock. Let us know what your favorite scene was in the comments section of Chapter 17 and 18. Give us your favorite scene from Chapter 17. Give us your favorite scene from Chapter 18. Monday night, Lord willing, we'll be reviewing Rogue One. So, you guys know for the last, I don't know how many weeks now, 6, 7, 8 weeks, we've been doing this whole what is Star Wars? What makes Star Wars Star Wars? And exploring the legacy and all that stuff. And we started out with the first episode discussing that, and then we immediately went into an in-depth and critical analysis of each one of the films. We did the original trilogy. We did the prequel trilogy. We just did Solo. We're about to do Rogue One on Monday, so you guys are going to want to join that discussion before we move into the sequels. So, thanks for being with us tonight. It's a Friday night. You guys could have been anywhere else, but you were here, and we thank you for that. And so until Monday, I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.